Hello, I'm Rod Hagelin. We at Canadian Sawmill Industries would like to welcome you to the world of the Woodcraft Portable Sawmill. We have produced this comprehensive video training program for you. This program will cover and demonstrate placing and leveling the mill, cutting system setup and maintenance, lumber production examples, blade maintenance and sharpening, options, and engine maintenance. Please take your time watching this program, and remember, if there's something you miss or that you didn't understand, simply rewind the cassette and watch it again. When being towed, the mill has a total tongue weight of only 85 pounds, allowing any full-sized vehicle to easily tow it. In preparation for setup, position the woodcraft close to your log supply and on solid ground. Lower the front legs and then lift and disconnect from the hitch. Final position can be done by maneuvering the mill into position by hand. Once in place, lower the rear legs. Next, disconnect the carriage head safety assembly like this. Lower the log loading arms by removing the safety pins which are on each arm of the loader. Level the front legs crosswise using a level like this. Ensure that you have sufficient fuel. Ensure that the engine has proper oil and is at the correct level. Start the engine, and if cold, use the choke. Let the engine warm up for a few minutes, a little longer if it's a diesel. Ensure that there are no obstructions on the rails. Keeping the engine idling, move the carriage head towards the front near the hitch by pushing the hydraulic feed lever in the direction of travel. Note, this takes the weight off the rear of the mill, making it easier to level. Turn the engine off. Level the rear legs lengthwise and crosswise by adjusting the height of the legs, like this. Now you want to take the weight off the wheels. Lower the middle legs and ensure that the middle legs sit firmly on the ground to ensure stability. Use blocks if necessary. This is especially important if you're cutting extremely large or heavy logs, as it eliminates all undue stress on the mill. Use a string line across the bunks to be absolutely accurate. Now that your mill is firmly leveled, you're almost ready to cut some lumber. But first, let's ensure that the blade is installed and aligned correctly. This section will show you how to install a new blade and change blades for sharpening. To change blades, open the saw head cover, then loosen the hydraulic pressure with this valve. Push the block back, which completely loosens the tension off the blade. Then slide off the old blade. Don't make the mistake of putting the blade on backwards with the teeth facing in the wrong direction. It won't cut. Load the new blade, making sure that the teeth are facing counterclockwise. Make sure that the teeth are not in contact with the edge of the bandsaw wheel. Close the release valve and pump the blade tension pressure to a minimum of 2,000 psi. Sometimes the length of the blade will vary by a small amount, so it's important that you watch this next step very carefully. When pumping the hydraulic pressure, make sure that the ram contacts the block to ensure that you are actually moving the wheel. With full pressure, there should be no gap like this. If there is, insert the metal shim to ensure that you have positive contact with the wheel block, like this. The wheel alignment is set up at the factory and does not normally need further setup. However, to ensure that it is correct, check that the blade runs on the center of the band wheel by first turning it by hand. Turn the wheels 4 or 5 rotations by hand to check that the blade runs on the wheels properly. The 1-degree crown on the band wheels will automatically center the blade on the wheels. The blade should ride on the band wheel so the teeth do not come in contact with the wheel. The gullet of the blade should be approximately 3/8 of an inch away from the edge of the band wheel. The reason for this is to prevent the set of the tooth from being flattened. The following adjustment may be necessary because blade tolerances are not always consistent. We'll show you what we mean. If the blade wanders to the front edge or to the back edge of the band wheel, adjust the band wheel deflection control screw, which is located on the back of this case. This will bring the wheel back into alignment, which will bring the blade back to center. To repeat, don't let the teeth hit the edge of the band wheel. Ensure that you've got approximately 3/8 of an inch from the bottom of the gullet to the front edge of the band wheel. Now, close the cover and put the safety straps on. This section will cover the setup of the guide block. As you'll see, it's very easy to check and align. The guide block alignment is critical for optimum mill performance. With worn guide blocks or incorrect alignment, you may experience blade waver, producing waving cuts or several other problems. Severe misalignment may even cause the blade to break. Let's open the cover. Now, each of these 2 guide blocks must have 1/4 of an inch down pressure on the blade and be equal distance from the mill bit. Now, to do this, first position the saw carriage so that it's in a position between 2 of the mill bunks and at a convenient height to make some measurements from a straight edge that's straddling the 2 mill bunks like this. Of course, ensure that the engine is off. Loosen the guide block positioning nut and slide it to about 4 inches from the frame, like this. Tighten the positioning nut. Remove the old guide block with an Allen wrench, like this. As you can see, the curved edges indicate wear. Loosen the guide block assembly with the correct size wrench. Insert the new guide block as shown, making sure it does not rest against the thrust bearing at the back. It should be flush with the front of the holder, like this. Tighten the Allen screw. Now, lower the guide block so that it just gently touches the top of the blade. Finger tighten the bottom bolts to keep a gentle pressure on the blade, just enough so that the guide block doesn't move around. Measure the distance from your reference point on the mill and either mark it with a pen or jot it down. Make this measurement from the gullet of the blade, not from the tip of a tooth. The reason we measure from the gullet of the blade is because the teeth have a set to them. If we measured from the tip of the tooth, obviously the measurement would be incorrect. Now we want to create a small downward pressure on the blade. Continue to tighten the bottom nuts so that the block moves downwards 1/4 inch from your first measurement or from your mark. Don't go more than 1/4 inch or your guide block will wear faster than normal. Adjust both nuts so that the blade ends up parallel to the bunk. You don't want the blade to end up like this or like this. The blade must end up parallel to the bed, so measure from the gullet and the back of the blade and adjust the nuts to ensure that both distances are equal. Now, position the block assembly so that the front edge is just behind the gullet, like this. If it's too far forward, the teeth will cut the guide block. If it's too far back, the blade is not supported properly. When they are correct, lock the block in place by tightening the top nuts. When locking these nuts, check your measurements again, as you might have to readjust these back and forth a little bit to ensure the block stays in alignment parallel with the bed when finally locked in place. When completed, do exactly the same with the other guide block. The final check is to ensure that both guide blocks are equal distances from the bed. This is very important, and to achieve this, you may have to bring one block down a wee bit more than the other from your reference mark. If you find that one guide block must be consistently adjusted much lower than the other, you will have faster wear on that guide block than the other one. In this case, one of the carriage chain lifts may be slightly out of adjustment. They're very easy to check and adjust. Here's what we do. If necessary, start the engine and raise the carriage to put some weight on the chain. Then simply adjust this nut to raise or lower this side of the carriage to bring it back to level. To check this, measure the distance from the straight edge to the blade, like this, and ensure that both distances are exactly equal. Remember, guide blocks will wear, so it's important to check them from time to time for wear and alignment. It's also important to have a spare set of guide blocks. The last thing you want to do is find yourself miles from nowhere, out in the bush, unable to cut because you don't have a spare set of inexpensive guide blocks. There are a few areas that require periodic lubrication and cleaning. For instance, these wheel bearings should be greased not too often, about once a month maximum. They are sealed bearings and require 2 pumps of the grease gun only, no more. If you over-grease them, you'll blow the seals out and destroy the bearings. Now, here's some more information. Make sure these dogs get cleaned and sprayed occasionally with a light lubricant that won't thicken or freeze in extremely cold weather. And please, don't use heavy oils or thick greases. They'll only attract and hold sawdust. Now, you'll get a lot of sawdust buildup in this area and around your band wheels, so clean it out often. I'd like to take just one more moment and show you this chain lift bearing. It's up here. Again, it's a sealed bearing. 1 pump only of the grease handle, 1. If you over-grease it, you'll blow the seals and destroy the bearing. Keep all of the sliding mechanisms clean and lightly lubricated. This section will demonstrate how to measure and adjust the amount of set on the saw teeth. Different species of wood may require a blade with different amounts of set. You'll find it very easy.
Place the blade in the setter. Adjust the 2 screws so that the tip of the sawtooth is at the same height as the point of the gauge. Place a raker tooth in alignment with the tip of the gauge and close the setter. Adjust gauge so that the gauge tip just touches the raker tooth. Then turn the outer ring of the dial to 0 on the needle. Your set reference is now determined. At this point, open the setter and advance the blade clockwise to position the next tooth, which is bent away from the operator, and place the tip of that tooth in front of the tip of the gauge. Note, at this point, you will set every 3rd tooth. Close the gauge and read the degree of set which is indicated on the gauge. Yvonne is going to check the set of the first tooth. As you can see, the first set is only 10 degrees, and we're trying to get a 20-degree set on the blade. So what Yvonne is going to have to do is adjust the hammer with an Allen wrench so that the actual tooth reaches a 20-degree set. Now, it may seem simple, just add 10 degrees. Well, you can't just do that. What you got to do is actually overset it. You may actually have to move the dial so it reads 30 or 40 degrees. The reason for this is because the tip of the blade is heat tempered. So what you in fact have to do to get that 20 degrees is overset it, let it spring back, and then check your set again. Once you have your set determined, lock it into place. This will make it easy to set the entire blade. To set the teeth on the opposite side, remove the blade, turn the blade inside out, carefully. Place the blade back on the setter and proceed as previously demonstrated. No other aspect of bandsaw milling is as important as the necessity to have a sharp blade. You can sharpen your own blades and save yourself time and money. The advantage to the manual sharpener is it'll sharpen any blade, any size, any angle. I'll show you how it works. Place the blade into the sidearm supports. These are adjustable so that you can raise and lower the blade to fit any size blade that you may have. As well, place the blade into the holder and then ensure that it bottoms. Adjust the height of the blade by using these adjustments so that the teeth are above the top of the holder. Next, take a right angle square and place one side on your table and the other up to the bottom of your blade. Do this on both sides so that the distances are equal. This ensures that the blade is absolutely square to the grinder, ensuring a perfect grind. If for some reason one side or the other is slightly higher or lower, use these nuts to fine adjust so that it is even all the way across. This ensures that the blade is square to the grinder. Next, attach the pitch adjustment to the grinder itself. This is the adjuster that sets the distance of your tooth to be sharpened. You can just put on the nut so that it's just finger tight. It's not necessary to reef this nut down with a wrench. Good finger tightness will be fine. A good rule of thumb to remember is that you should start your sharpening on the first tooth right of the weld. This gives you a good idea that when you've actually finished doing a full revolution of sharpening. So advance your blade to the position where you're ready to go. Another good rule of thumb to follow is to use a WD-40 or a silicone-based aerosol lubricant and just spray a little bit on your blade and a little bit in the holder. This just helps you ease the advancement of your blade. Blade hook is the cutting angle of the tooth, and it varies from blade to blade. This particular blade is a 15-degree hook. What we're going to do now is set the degree of angle on the grinder so that it is 15 degrees as well. To do this, we take this adjustment, loosen it off, and move the grinding head 15 degrees. As you can see on this gauge, what we've done is we've gone from 90 degrees, which is an absolutely square cut, back to 75 degrees, subtracting 15 degrees, which has given us the absolute hook that we need. With the power off, pull the grinding stone down into the blade. At this point, advance the blade backwards so that you can make sure that the hook of the blade and the angle of the grinding stone is exactly the same. If an adjustment needs to be made, use your adjustment here again to alter the angle of your grinding stone one way or another. With the hook and the gullet of your blade against the grinding wheel, lower the depth adjustment so that it just touches. Next, using the pitch adjuster, adjust it forward so that the pitch controller just touches the front of the tooth like that. We're now ready to sharpen. With this particular type of sharpener, what we're going to be sharpening is only the cutting edge of each tooth. Now we're ready to grind. First of all, throw on some power. With a little bit of slight back pressure, keep your blade taut against your pitch controller and slowly lower your grinder down. And as you can see, what I've done there is I've just very, very lightly sharpened the cutting edge of that tooth. It's all you need to do. Just move the tooth forward. Now in that case, I've ground just a tad too heavy, so that tells me that I need to adjust my pitch forward just a little bit. As with all bandsaw blades, you want to keep some maintenance on them. With this particular one, because it doesn't grind or clean out the gullet and the back sweep all that much, what you may want to do is pick up a little handheld Dremel, something so that every third or fourth time that you do a sharpening, you may just run it through and clean out the debris. That'll also allow you to get rid of any little burrs and nicks and even grind out the very small types of fractures you might get in a blade if you've hit something too hard. Another thing I'd like to recommend, even with a brand new blade, it's a good idea to give it a very light sharpening. This will increase blade life and will give you a faster cutting speed right out of the box. Eventually, the grinding wheel will wear and the cutting edge will become improperly shaped like this. To correct it, use a dressing stone like this to reshape the edge. If there is one rule of thumb as far as sharpening goes, is that you should grind as lightly as possible, taking off the smallest amount of material as possible. Heavy grinding will cause the temper of your blade to change, making the blade more brittle. This will shorten the life of your blade. This next section covers engine maintenance. For a number of years now, we've exclusively used Kohler air-cooled gas engines for all of our sawmills. We've tried others, but for us, Kohler's been the best. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to Vern Croker. He is the Kohler distributor who's part of a vast worldwide Kohler distributor dealer network. Vern, how you doing?
Hi, John. Fine.
Vern, tell me why you think that Kohler's been a really good choice for us.
John, there are a number of reasons why it's a good choice for you. One is that Kohler has over 11,000 dealers in North America alone. They are represented in over 50 different countries around the world, so your customers are never far from a servicing outlet. Did you know, John, that in our Wisconsin factory we have over 14,000 employees?
Geez, that's a lot of people. How many engines can you guys build in a day?
In a typical day, they can produce over 5,000 engines.
I had no idea your company was that big.
It's not only big, it's been around since 1873. In fact, we've been building engines since the early part of this century. Did you know that we built engines for Admiral Byrd's Arctic expedition?
Of the type of Kohler motor that we use, is there any idea how many are out there working?
There are literally hundreds of thousands out there, John.
What would they be used for, other than what we do with the sawmill?
They're used in any industrial heavy-duty application.
Such as?
Forestry, mining, agricultural. They really stand up because of the cast iron block and the full pressure oil lubrication.
Vern, we're going to go through a very quick rundown on how to maintain the K582. They've got a number of filters. Tell me what the schedule is for changing them and how I change them and what's needed to maintain this engine.
John, maintenance is very important on these engines, and it's very simple to do. There's 3 filters. You have a fuel filter, you have an air cleaner, air filter, and you also have an oil filter.
Now, how do I maintain my air filter?
John, all the instructions are on the front of the cover, but let me show you anyways.
Okay.
Inside here, we have
what's
an air
that?
filter and a pre-cleaner.
Oh, what does that do?
This pre-cleaner traps all the dirt before it gets into the air filter. What you have to do is take it off every 25 hours and wash it in warm water and soap.
Right.
After you've washed it, be sure not to wring it out. If you wring it out, you'll stretch it, it won't work anymore.
All right. So, but the purpose of that is to what? Keep extra dirt and stuff out of my engine?
Yes.
All right.
It lengthens the life of your paper element.
Okay. So now after I've washed it, what do I do?
Take about a teaspoon of oil, put it onto the pre-cleaner,
Right.
and just squeeze it till all the oil comes through everywhere.
Okay. So you want to basically
saturate it.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Then put it back on, and the oil will trap all the dust particles.
Oh, great. So and that's going to keep my engine running longer and cleaner and all that kind of stuff.
Man, if you properly maintain your engine, John, it'll last for thousands of hours.
Okay, great. Okay, and now what's the next? You got a little fuel filter?
Fuel filter, that would be serviced as required as long as they use clean fuel in the engine, 500 hours.
Right.
That's the fuel filter.
Now that fuel filter, I can get it at a Kohler place, but I can get it anywhere, right? I can get it at a gas station if I want it.
Well, if you have to, yeah. If you can't get close to your nearest dealer, you can
Okay.
go to the gas station.
Now, oil filter, whereabouts is that?
Here's where you drain your oil. Here's where you fill your oil and check your oil level.
Now, what kind of oil should I be using?
For temperatures above freezing, use a straight 30 weight oil.
And then below freezing?
Below freezing, use a 1030 weight oil. But for detailed information, read your owner's manual.
Thanks, Vern. I know that in that short time period, there's no way to cover complete engine maintenance. So one of the things that we are doing at Woodcraft is that every time you get your mill, you get a complete Kohler manual, and this covers everything, anything and all that you want to know about your engine maintenance. Basically, if you follow the simple maintenance schedule with this engine, there's no reason why this shouldn't last you a lifetime.
Now that you know how to set up your mill properly, let's take a few moments and demonstrate some cutting techniques. But first, let's demonstrate the use of the self-loader to load a log. As you can see, the Woodcraft can be custom ordered to handle logs up to 70 feet in length. Before cutting, naturally you should read your owner's manual. First, place the log on the loader, making sure that these track protectors are up, like this. With your engine running, we are going to lift the log by raising this lever like this. But first, to prevent the possibility of the log rolling off of the operator's side of the mill, raise both log stops, one at the front and one at the rear. Some operators raise the front head as well, using this lever marked head like this. Now, raise the lever marked log lift to lift the log onto the mill. Notice how the front head stops the log, like this. After your log is loaded, be sure to drop these track protectors using these cables, like this. This prevents the saw carriage from hitting them. Next, to provide a stable support for the log, use this lever to raise the rear heads. Once the rear heads are up, clamp the log tightly to them by using this lever here. Now you're ready to cut, but before you do, make sure that the heads are not up too high, or you could run your saw blade into them. Definitely bad news. So constantly check the height of the rear heads. Now you're almost ready to cut, but next, adjust the height of the blade as needed with this up-down lever. It raises and lowers the carriage. Now, note the measurement of the blade height on this gauge. This is so that on the next cut, you can accurately set the thickness of the board. Next, position the sliding guide block so that it will clear the log about an inch. Advance the throttle and move the feed lever forward so that the blade enters the cut gently. When you clear the cut, slow the engine down a bit. Lift the blade to clear the top of the log and return the saw carriage for the next cut, like this. Lower the head to the desired thickness and repeat the process. The log we've just cut was very uniform in thickness throughout its entire length. But in the real world, not all logs are perfect. Some trees may have a severe flare or taper. That's why we've designed these toe boards as an option. With this lever, you can raise or lower either end of the log like this. This helps you get the most high-grade lumber from your log. In the process of producing a cant, the log is opened up with one or more cuts. You can easily turn the log by manipulating these levers. You're now ready to square off the log, but first ensure that these rear heads are all the way up, like this. Then, clamp your log against them to ensure a 90-degree cut. As you can see, Yvonne, by habit, then lowers the rear heads before cutting. With a series of cuts, and by rotating the log, you will produce a cant, which can be sold as is, or can be custom cut into any dimensions. For instance, custom beams of any size can now be produced. 2x12s, 2x10s, 2x8s, 2x6s, 2x4s, or even smaller. Watch how Yvonne easily edges some of his earlier cuts while producing dimensional lumber on one pass. This has been a demonstration of typical cutting techniques, but did you know that you can also mill your own beveled siding? This inexpensive attachment operates like this. Starting with a cant, which has been cut to the desired width, raise one side by turning the handle, like this. Next, simply clamp it in place, like this. Again, ensuring that there are no obstructions to your saw blade, lower the carriage to the desired thickness of the siding and proceed with the cut. Once the cut is complete, lower the cant by turning the handle and make your next cut. After following these procedures, you will be able to consistently maintain your woodcraft mill so that you can cut wood so precisely that you can even produce your own veneer. Watch this. Now that's accuracy. This is truly the most accurate portable sawmill in the world. We appreciate your taking the time to view this instructional video, as it demonstrates how easy it is to operate and maintain your own Woodcraft portable sawmill. Thank you.